I'm going to start painting the camouflage color onto the model, and I've decided to use German gray from Vallejo. I knew I wanted a darker color, but I've done more desert-based looking paint schemes, and I did one that was based on a World War II Matilda tank that was kind of a dark bluish gray, a desaturated blue. I've done that. And I'd been considering, greens and browns and stuff like that. And I've just, in looking around at World War II armor, that's what I was looking at for my inspiration. I remembered seeing one, and I don't even remember what it was, but I remembered seeing one that was a tan color like this, and then they had painted black or a very dark gray. That's what this German gray is. It's not truly black, it's just a very dark gray. But anyway, they had painted the very dark gray as a camo just to break up the pattern, I guess. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, that looks pretty cool. Now you'll notice I'm using acrylics. I'm using kind of a lacquer application method. I'm not trying to get a real straight line for the demarcation, and that's deliberately. Just mainly because I like this way of painting. I just thought it would look cool to do it this way. I'm going to paint the engine parts with, this is lead belcher toned down with some deck tan. Now that I'm looking at it, I probably could have just used sky gray, but sometimes I out-clever myself. Main thing is I want a light grayish, steelish gray look to it, because I'm going to add further effects over this to give it a worn look, but I don't want it to be shiny silver. Now, the way I'm going to do the weathering is this main engine part is going to have less of the rust effects and more of a heat and grime stained effects, and then there's going to be a part on top of that that has more of a rust look, but with the heat effects on it. And then there's going to be an exhaust pipe that sticks off of it that's going to be pretty much just total rust. But they'll all have this base coat. Now sometimes I like to paint panels so that they look like they came from another vehicle, kind of as a field expedient replacement, but they haven't had time to paint it. So I'm going to paint this. You can notice I got it very thin. I'm going to have to do multiple coats on this. That's not by design. I just accidentally over-thinned it, but I figured I'd go with it. I can make it work. But what I'm going to do is paint it with camouflage olive green. It's part of the Panzer Aces line from Vallejo. And I think, yeah, Panzer series. Yeah, and it will just look like it came from a different vehicle because something happened to the original that was on here. So I'll just paint 2 or 3 or 8 coats and get this up to full opacity. I'll paint this cable deck tan. My choice of color here is based on the fact that this was sitting out on my bench. You know what? I just made an executive decision. It's going to have a replacement foot too. All right, the next step we'll be putting on some decals, or decals, or decals, or stickers, or markings, or water slide transfers, or whatever you want to call them. I gave all the parts a coat of this satin varnish from VMS. It's the first time I've used this, and I'm really, really impressed with this. I've always used Future for my gloss coats, and it works fine, but I didn't want a gloss coat on this. But I did want something to make it a little less flowy when I start putting on washes and stuff. And then I wanted something a little smoother for the decals to go down on, even though it's a very textured surface. And I've never been really impressed with any of the satin varnishes that I've used over the years. But this one, it works exactly like you would expect. The application was a little weird. I'd seen Martin on Night Shift use this, and I don't remember his exact words, but it basically conveyed when you put this on, you got to put it on in just kind of a wet coat. So I did that. I didn't blast it on there, but I just kind of did it almost like you would from a rattle can. I just did a spray pass, just psh, psh, like that with my airbrush, and got a very wet coat, and it gives it a really, really nice satin surface. To me, a nice satin surface should be bordering on gloss, but not so shiny as to be gloss. But definitely something that smooths things out. You can really see it right here on this panel that's pretty much flat. It reflects a little bit of light, but there's a little dullness to it. This is the perfect satin coat. To be honest, I've tried that from VMS. I've tried this Oil Expert. I've used this Metal Prep 4K a few times. It's something you put on metal parts to prime them so paint actually sticks to them, and it actually works. I've only used these 3 products from VMS, but to me, they're like Tamiya or Bandai. They just work. I'm really impressed with them. And even though they ship out of Poland, the shipping when I ordered stuff from them is generally cheaper than what it would be to order here in the U.S. And it gets here in a fairly reasonable amount of time. So I highly recommend taking a look at these VMS products. They're very good stuff. All right, I've got a Decal cutout here, and I'm going to do, you've seen me do this routine plenty of times. I'm sticking the Decal in my coffee cup of water over here, and it's warm, and it's sitting on a coffee warmer, and it's as warm as coffee water. So I find that helps a lot, and I'm letting it sit in here exactly this long, and then I'm just going to check it, make sure that it's sliding around nicely, and it is. Now what I'm going to do is get some of this micro set as surface prep. I don't always use surface prep. If the surface that I'm applying the decal to is already fairly smooth and there's not a lot of carrier film around the decal, I don't bother putting it on. To be completely transparent with you guys, sometimes I do it on camera simply because I want to demonstrate best practice. I don't want to mislead anybody that might not have experience to evaluate when they need it or when they don't. So in general, sometimes I'll show using it, but the reality is if I'm just working for speed to get things done, I don't always use it. But anyway, because of the texture on this surface, I'm going to go ahead and use some. I'm hoping it doesn't interact with that VMS satin finish. I gave it like 10 minutes to dry. I just airbrushed it on just a little while ago. So this is literally an experiment in progress. If you look, you might be able to see some silvering right there, and that's a result of that textured surface. But that's not a problem, because once that dries, I can cut a slice into that and get rid of that. Now I'm going to use my Solva set. Let me clean my micro set off the brush, And then I'll just use some of this solve set to go down over that. And that's going to conform the decal. It's going to soften it up, make it pull down tighter. May take care of some of that silvering. May not. I'm not going to worry about it. And I'll give that a little bit of time to dry. I've said this, I think, before, but I'll bring it up again because it's worth saying. If you're using Solvaset or any decal setting solution, once you get it on there like that, and it's had a little time to start softening, don't touch the decal again. Even if it wrinkles up, leave it alone. A lot of times, especially when using Solvaset or hotter solvents like that, they'll bubble up and look all wrinkly. And if you start trying to get those wrinkles out while it's still wet, you're just going to ruin the decal. If you leave it alone, let it dry for several hours, it should flatten out. Anything that doesn't flatten out, you can slice open, punch a hole in, do whatever. Another thing, if you have silvering and you can't get rid of it through other means, paint over it. You know, I could go in where that silvering is showing right there between the slice and the 9, and I could just get a very fine brush and go in with my the German, I think it was German gray, that I used there, and just paint over it. You can also put chips over it, so I don't get hung up on if there's any silvering. There's plenty of ways to take care of it. Something else to think about with decals: if you don't really like the color of the decal, but you like the shape, you can always paint over it. It acts as a really good guide, and if you're just careful, you can paint over that. And then if there's any wonky in any areas, that's where you add your chipping, so that it looks good. But I'm going to continue putting the decals on this model. There's quite a few stencils. I don't know that I'm going to use all of these stencils. I don't have the patience for that. I'm going to use a few of them. But I'm going to get these on here, get them ready to go, and then in the next video, I'll start in on probably on panel line washes and chipping and stuff like that. So thank you so much for being a supporter. This is a supporter exclusive video, so thank you very much for your support. And as I always like to do, I'll leave you with one final thought. In this hobby, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.